All right. I am so excited to be here with Latania. She and I made a connection. We both have a desire to service couples and keep families together. So, Latania, thank you so much for taking time out to be a part of Love Talk. Now, let's get going by you telling me a little bit about yourself, about your husband, about your family, anything you want to share so that we can get to know you better.
Okay, thank you, Denise, so much for having me today. I am Latania Williams McAdoo, and I am married to Jono McAdoo. We've been married almost 2 years. We've been together about 12 years. We took an unconventional route to our journey to marriage, simply because we really wanted to get to know each other. And because I was getting married, I got
Whoa, whoa.
sure that
It went to mute.
I was,
It went on mute somehow. I don't know if a button got pushed or what, but that's okay. So just start with your response. When I say, tell me, like, just introduce yourself. I'm Latania McAdoo. Just go there because somehow the mute button got hit.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
go ahead.
okay. So I am Latania Williams McAdoo, and I am married to Jono McAdoo. We've been married approximately almost 2 years, and we've been together about 12 years. And we took an unconventional route to get here simply because we really wanted to work on our marriage by way of going to counseling, long term, as we still go to counseling, simply because we want to make our marriage work. We want to make sure that we learn how to effectively communicate and respect one another and be able to work through the conflict that we have.
Okay, that's awesome.
Huh?
That is so awesome. I am so excited for you guys, and congratulations on letting love reign in your relationship. I know that when you and I first connected and I learned about you being a couples counselor, one of the things that you told me is that you wanted to help marriages last. And a lot of that came out of what you were doing before you became a counselor. So tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a couples counselor.
Yes, I used to be a wedding coordinator for about 15 years. And I became a wedding coordinator because I simply love weddings. I love the bliss associated with the wedding day and the process of people getting married. But the only thing was that the bliss that they had while they were preparing for marriage kind of sometimes dwindled away as the marriage continued. And so I was kind of asked to help them find a counselor to help them, a marriage counselor to help them remain together. And so it eventually became something that was part of my life, as it was put on my heart to go to school to be a marriage counselor. And I kind of questioned God about that, because I'm like, Lord, now I'm not married. How am I going to help people? But one of the things I felt in my spirit is that if he called me to do it, then he would equip me to do it. And so I went to school, went to Liberty University, studied marriage and family therapy, which is what I have a master's in. And so, that's where I am now. I have started a private practice in helping couples try to keep a happy, healthy marriage.
Oh, that is so awesome. That is so wonderful. Now, tell us a little bit about your practice and the couples that you serve.
So my practice, the name is Hopeful Expectations Counseling and Consulting Group, where we are instilling hope and expecting a positive change. I service couples mainly. I have probably 80% couples. I also see individuals for depression or anxiety or just any everyday issues is what I do. But right now I am mainly working with couples and trying to help them to have a healthy relationship and teaching them strategies to do that.
Okay, awesome. Now, I know you and I connected because you have an online community very similar to the First Wives Club, but it's for couples. We connected really around the synergy of wanting to see relationships continue to thrive. In your practice, can you tell us what some of those main concerns are that you find to be true in the couples that you help? Do you see a common theme, or is it really unique per couple? What is some of the perspectives you can draw from your practice?
Well, most all couples are unique. Their situations are unique to them. But every couple, I say every couple that comes into my office in some form or fashion has a difficult time effectively communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And that could mean that, one person yells when they're passionate about something. The other person may not even talk about their feelings. Sometimes people think that because their partner is not talking about their issues, that everything is good. That's not necessarily true, because what is happening is, instead, I've learned that growing up, if I'm quiet about my issues, then there's no conflict in the relationship. I don't have to confront my partner about anything. So I'll just be quiet. And sometimes people think that that is a great quality, but what happens, that person may begin to feel resentment because of what they didn't say and what their partner don't know about them. So communication is very difficult for most couples. The other side of that is, one person complains a lot. And it's not that complaining is a problem, because we all will have complaints. It's how you bring that complaint to your partner. And your complaint can come in form of criticism. So we want to be careful about how we bring up topics, of discussion, and making sure that our partner is able to hear what we're saying. So
That
communication is a huge problem for most couples.
Yeah, that is really good. I know that some of the research that I've been doing as I bring content to the First Wives Club, it resonates with that same thing, right? That communication is this underlying tool that we are not taking good advantage of.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's both preventative for issue and it's also a remedy for problems. And so it says to me that if we can develop good communication skills with each other, and a willingness is what I'm hearing you say too, to talk to one another, then we can see the relationship be healthy and function better. That doesn't mean he always get his way or I always get my way. It's a matter of expression so that everybody understands what's going on and has a sense or a chance to even be involved in the process.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see that it's the woman or the wife that's bringing forth the necessity for counseling, or do you see it being introduced on the husband's behalf as well? What's kind of your theme as to how they end up across the desk from you?
Well, it is definitely mostly women,
Uh-huh.
but what is now changing is I am beginning to get a lot of calls from men. And the common theme when men call in is the fact that the woman has checked out, emotionally checked out, and he wants to save the marriage. He wants to continue to grow in the marriage or relationship. But what has happened is she has emotionally checked out. And usually once I get them here, have what I've noticed is that she has had a need that she continues to bring up. She talks about it, and she, it may come across as a means of a complaint, but what has happened is her need has been neglected or not heard, and therefore not addressed. And so basically, what happens is she has emotionally checked out, where she stopped talking. And it's really dangerous when she stopped talking, because what men think is that, she stopped talking, so that issue has gone away. But that issue has not gone away. That issue is just, it doesn't matter to her anymore. And she's checked out. And sometimes women that check out will seek solitude in other relationships outside of the marriage or outside of the committed relationship. And so basically what she is really needing is someone to talk to her, someone to listen to her, someone to care for her. But see, what I try to get them to do is to have, him to understand where her need is. But a lot of times though, when she is emotionally checked out, it is very, very difficult to bring her back. And I say her in this case because women, we're mostly emotional. And so we operate out of emotion, most of us. And for men, it's a little bit different. Now, a lot of times when women call in, a lot of times it's communication, and sometimes it's infidelity. And the infidelity is sometimes for men is, well, she won't, do this sexual position that I want her to do, or she's too tired to have sex, or she makes some excuses for not having sex. And so that is a whole other topic, but it's just really being able to, it goes back to communicating, talking about your needs. And not only, I say communicating, but we have to listen. We have to listen. We have to, in addition to listening, we have to hear what is being said and make sure that we're validating. So because you're validating your partner doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them. It just means that I understand how you feel about that. That makes sense. I can, that I can just relate to what you're saying. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with it though.
That's awesome. Because I think one of the things that you touched upon is where many wives find themselves is they are attempting to express, not that it's received, but they hit that wall where they're like, you know what? I give up, and they start existing instead of really being invested in the relationship. And to your point, that is a very dangerous place. Because at that point, you do open yourself for other ways of attention. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come from another man and that infidelity is going to follow. But you checked out over here and you become more invested in something else that is taking you away from the relationship, and you don't have that intimacy that is necessary for the bond to exist. So that was a really, really excellent point. So when you are trying to help a wife, I'm going to stick right there. When you are trying to help a wife come back and you are trying to coach a husband on what he needs to come back, what are some of the things that you're kind of helping them to work through?
Well, what I try to do in that case, when she is checked out, then I try to go back to, what brought you together? Trying to recapture that fondness and admiration of what brought them together. And sometimes thinking about the good times and thinking about when things were in a better, when things were better, will sometimes kind of bring her back around with, thinking about, oh yeah, it took him like 6 months to get me to even go out on a date with him. But when he got me, we just had a good time together. So if you can rekindle that fondness and admiration that they once had, you're kind of making a little opening, a little path to working on getting them back to that place. Because it kind of offers a little bit of hope. If I can, remind them of how it used to be and help them to know that if you do the work, we can probably take you back there, then that offers a little glimmer of hope, and it might bring them back to another session because they want to recapture what they used to have.
Well, I will tell you, I'm encouraged to hear that men are reaching out to you because there is this perception that saving the marriage is usually something that the wife sits in the seat to fight for. But to hear that there are men who are longing for their relationships to last and that they're taking the initiative to say, hey, we need to go, is such a great sign, especially in this day and time where we always want to think that they don't care or that they're not invested or they're not willing. But you're saying here that there are men who are willing to fight for their families and recognize that, hey, I may not have done this the right, first time, and I need some help.
Yeah, I love to bring men into therapy because one of the things with men is they don't talk about their feelings as much as we do. And so when a man calls me, it just says so much about his commitment to the relationship, his desire to save the relationship, or even to, to win her back. And so I love having men in here, because, and I really, sometimes I kind of focus in on the man. And I often thank them for coming, because of the stigma associated with coming to therapy, and men feeling like they don't have a place to express themselves, a place to talk. And because men are brought up to be macho, or you don't talk about your feelings, you don't cry, you don't show expression. But that right there is really just built up a wall around men where they can't be expressive. And so when they come in my office, I just love to really try to get them to open up and help their wives to really understand and maybe see some things in him, or learn something about him that she's never known before.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so beautiful. Now, one of the things that intrigued me from our very first conversation together is when you said you wanted to help couples have lasting relationships. So, do you have a few tips on what is going to help them have a lasting relationship that you really bring to the table through your counseling or otherwise? But what are some of your takeaway tips that people can really grab onto?
Well, I will always go back to communication, because if you don't have communication, you don't have a relationship. So definitely having communication. If you don't know how to communicate effectively, or get your needs met by way of communicating, I always definitely encourage you to seek counseling. Find books. There are many books out there. I'll also tell them to get to know who your partner is. Gottman has he calls it love maps. And love maps is getting to know the intricate parts of your partner by way of asking questions, learning more, asking yourself, do you know your partner's favorite meal? Do you know where your partner would like to spend their life after retirement? Do you know what your partner's what is your partner fond of? What does your partner have a passion for? Things like that, getting to know your partner on a deeper level. Also, exercising fondness and admiration. When you see your partner, what is it that turns you on about your partner? When you can answer that question, like, I love when I see my partner on the stage when they're speaking to people, and the passion that they have. I love how my partner takes care of his parents. Just the fondness and admiration that you have about one another, in addition to the communication. And and one other thing too is creating rituals. Creating rituals is just those little things that you decide that we're going to do, and you stick to them. So you say a ritual for one of my couples. One of the rituals they had was one day out of the month they were going to do something new. And so they look on their calendars, they find out when that day is, and when there's a day that's free for both of them, and then they'll create something. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with an idea, and then the next month you come up with the idea. And so those are times for connecting. It's called creating rituals for connecting. A simple ritual for connecting is date night. Date night means that every third and first and third Friday, we're gonna go out to dinner. We're gonna put away our cell phones, and we're just gonna talk, and we're gonna have an intimate dinner. Some people create rituals for sex. If a couple, say one person works out of town, and they're only home maybe 2 weeks at a time. So they might say, well, our ritual is that we're going, the 10 days that you're home, we're going to have sex 5 of those days. And I know that might sound odd for some people, but the rituals that you create are your own. They are your own, but it is a means of connecting. So communication, fondness and admiration, creating rituals, all those things are things that can help your marriage last.
That is so awesome. I've never thought of it in the context of ritual, but you know, those are things that give you something to look forward to,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To,
Yeah.
really think about. It's like he put something on your mind, right? And it's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you replay over and over in your head again. Um, and I think that that's very important to keep the spontaneity and to keep the spice, if you will, in the relationship, so that it's something that you're drawn to, you're attracted to, that you desire. And so those things are critically important, and being deliberate about them will feel like it'll
Yeah.
feel funny at first, but
Mm-hmm.
it'll become something that you kind of get a desire for over time. Those are,
Yeah.
are fantastic
Yeah.
tips that you gave for us. Now, you and I were talking a little bit about all of these common thought to be marriage problems, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
finances or children or just dealing with stress. And when you're approaching a problem, what is the real way to get to the underlying issue or the underlying concern? What are some tips that you have for us when we're dealing with finances to really assess what's going on, or when we're dealing with stress or the impact of children, to really assess what's going on?
So depending on the problem,
Mhm.
what I like to do is what Gottman calls is a rapport intervention. And so the rapport intervention can be used with any issue, whether it's children, blending families, finances, sex, anything. And so the concept of rapport kind of goes with the communication I was talking about. So what we do is I have both of my clients, I hand them a little laminated copy, let them read off of it. And so basically there's a listener, and then there's the speaker. And so the speaker talks about the issue without criticism, without contempt, defensiveness, or stonewalling. And they talk about it without trying to point the finger at their partner. And so what I have their partner to do, because many times we check out of a conversation after a few sentences, is I have the partner to tell me what you heard them say, or tell her what you heard her say, simply so we can stay on the same page. And then that the listener, regardless of how they feel about the concern that's been brought up, they validate their partner. So it makes sense that you want the kids to go to bed at 9 o'clock instead of staying up late at night. That makes a lot of sense. And so even though he may have or she may have different feelings about that, even with finances, well, I understand that you want to save, but I like to shop. And both both points are valid. Both people's concern and how they see the issue is valid. How you look at it is valid. How your partner looks at it is valid. The thing is making sure that you understand what is being said, because what happens is a lot of times we'll hear something and then we'll stop listening only to offer a rebuttal. And then after you offer your rebuttal, then you've started an argument, and then the issue never gets resolved. And so I like to do that with all of my couples. Now, sometimes there are perpetual problems, and those perpetual problems are those problems where a couple is gridlocked on their issue. And so that is a different type of approach that I take. Whereas you're still listening, but you're talking about how this made you feel. And I have the listener to ask questions. Well, so how long have you felt like this? Or is there a story behind your feelings about this issue? Is there a story behind a particular issue, such as, is there a story behind how we raise our children? And yes, the story is that I grew up in a structured household where we had chores and we had rules and everybody participated. And so you really talk about your feelings instead of talking so much about the problem. Talk about how it made you feel. Because when you start talking about the problem and what your partner is not doing, then your partner is easily and ready to go on defense. So mainly you talk about, when you bring up the issue, you talk about how it made you feel and how it's affecting you. So putting it back on yourself will keep your partner from going on defense.
Yeah, and I found that, every relationship is going to have its tough points, right? They're going to struggle with something. But I think what you hit on is something that it took me a long time to learn, which is it really is not this issue that we arguing about, right? It really isn't the fact that you did not make the bed or you did not put your things away or that you did not, whatever the case may be. What's really the issue is how I feel about it. What's really the issue is how it's impacting me. And I found that I get a better result in the dialogue when I don't attack the thing, but I talk about how I feel. I talk about because he cares for me, right? And he don't want me to feel that way. But when we start addressing the situation, we start harping on the thing that happens, which he don't really care about that.
Right.
No, he can really care less. But when I start talking about how it makes me feel, how it impacts me, it's going to spark within him a genuine concern to potentially do something about it, because he don't want me to feel that way. He don't want me to be hurt. He did not choose me out of everybody else to come make my life miserable. That was his goal. And so I think when we can begin to have better conversations about our true feelings, about what's really going on with us, and it's not the fact that he left the plate and the fork in the sink, it's how it makes you feel. It's not the fact that he did whatever those little things are. It can bring about a change, but we're not taught that. To your earlier point, we're taught to suppress our feelings and not be authentic about it and try to go toe to toe on the issue. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Very, very Denise, everything in your marriage has to do with your environment as you grew up. And that is one thing that people really need to talk about. So that, let's talk about how did conflict look when you were growing up? How did y'all resolve issues? What did you do? Because some people feel like, well, in my household, we didn't talk about our issues. We didn't talk. Well, in our household, we were compassionate about our feelings, and we let each other know how we felt. So it's, as much as I have talked about communication is like such a huge element to a healthy, happy, long-lasting marriage or relationship.
That's beautiful. Well, before we wrap up, I always like to ask this one question. Tell us your one sentence wife wisdom, right, that you would say to a wife who is married and attempting to thrive. What wisdom would you give them?
Listening is extremely important, and we don't have to fight every battle or attend every fight. There are some things that you just have to overlook. And what I do is, my husband, I already know he's not going to close the closet. He's not going to close the closet door. Am I going to have a fit every time he doesn't close the closet door? It's some things that you just have to learn to overlook. You can't fight every battle.
Choose your battles. That's a good one. Excellent wisdom. Well, Latania, thank you so much. This was so good. And I am sure. So just brace yourself when my requests come again and say, Tanya, we need to hear from you, because I know that the lane you're working in to save families is valuable, and being able to have access to someone who can pour into our community is priceless. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Denise, for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.